All right, welcome to Unit 8. We're going to be talking about the Cold War, what happened after World War II, and this is our bridge to the modern era. I get born during this time period. I don't know if we'll quite get to 1982 in this unit, but by the time the Cold War is over, I'm around. So we are now. So today we're going to knock out what Europe is looking like after World War II. We're going to take a look at what the Iron Curtain is and what it means that the Iron Curtain has fallen. And containment policy. We're going to have many different policies in Europe after the war, in Asia after the war, basically the US versus the USSR, our sort of free market, capitalist, democratic, political economic sort of systems versus the political economic system of communism. And there's going to be a lot of different policies, a lot of different names for these policies, but it's all basically going to be coming back to containment. So that's where it's going to start, and we're just going to kind of modify it as we go through. We'll take a look at a few of those policies tomorrow, and then sort of throughout the Cold War as new things happen and we react to other things, we'll come up with these new policies. So at the beginning, the end of the beginning. So World War II ends, and then right after that, things are looking good. There's some post-war cooperation going on. The United Nations is put into place. Remember, the League of Nations failed in large part because it didn't really have a whole lot of authority to do things. The U.S. kind of stayed out of it. And the good news is a lot of these countries learned from their mistakes with the League of Nations when they put together the United Nations. And one of the big things the United Nations did is it was a place for these countries to talk things out. And one of the big places within the United Nations to talk things out was the Security Council. And the Security Council was basically the people who won World War II. So the U.S. has a permanent seat on the Security Council. England has a permanent seat on the Security Council. France has a permanent seat on the Security Council. Russia, the USSR, has a permanent seat on the Security Council. And China does as well, because they were on our side at the end of World War II. Now that's going to lead to some tensions in a few years. But right now, that's the group. There's other councils, there's other committees, a bunch of other countries are members in the UN, but that's like the main power seat, the Security Council. And we all get full veto power. So if all of the other countries on the Security Council want things to go one way, and we say no, then that's a no. But Russia has that same authority. So if all of us want to do something, but Russia says no, then no. So nothing can really be done in the UN without the agreement and cooperation of the United States and Russia and China and England and France. And the entire point of the UN is to prevent another world war. Remember, that was the point of the League of Nations. Let's not have another war like this ever again. And the League of Nations failed. The UN hasn't failed yet. There's certainly failures among the UN, and there's certainly things that the UN did not handle very well or could have handled better, and we'll talk some about that. We'll talk about that some over the next few units. But as far as its main number one goal of no World War III, so far, and honestly, there was a period of post-war cooperation. We were getting along with everybody else. We were getting along with the Russians as much as we really could. But it doesn't really last, unfortunately. And one of the first big splits that come between us and the Soviet Union is that one of the big things after World War II is everyone had to give everything back. We even gave the Philippines back to the Philippines. We allowed them to go free. And one of the big things Russia was supposed to do was remove its troops from all of the places that it had, like it says here, freed from Germany. It had freed Poland from Germany. It had freed Czechoslovakia from Germany. It had freed Hungary and Romania and Bulgaria and Yugoslavia and Albania and all these other countries. Germany had conquered early in the war, and Russia had, freed from the Germans. And but they didn't give them back after World War II. Was the problem? They didn't not give them back to Germany, give them back to themselves. And we and some of the other allies made some noise about that. We were like, hey, hold on. You're supposed to leave. You freed them from Germany, now let them be free. And the Soviet Union left. Their troops left, and they held these elections. According to our best evidence, and we can look at some of these documents. I think the plan will be looking at least one of these documents over the course of the thing to sort of prove that these were not free or fair elections. The Communist Party just wins 80-90% of the vote in all the countries, and that's just not very realistic. And so the U.S. and Britain get a bit scared at this point, because if we saved Europe from Germany, but we just end up losing Europe to the Soviet Union, then what was that war for? So we get scared that the Soviets are going to try and continue taking over territory and continue conquering more and more and more. So we kind of have to figure out a way to stop them from doing that without starting World War III. That's tough, So Germany gets divided up among the 4 victors in the war, right? So at least the 4 victors in Europe. China kind of is kept out of this one. But Russia gets to take its sort of quarter of Germany in the northeast. The UK takes this territory in the northwest, France in the southwest, and the US in the southeast. Basically, the 3 areas controlled by the US, France, and England all sort of become Western Germany. And the part that Russia has control over becomes Eastern Germany. East Germany is sorry. Eastern's not wrong, but the actual name of the territory is East Germany. And the city of Berlin, which you can sort of see right there in the middle, is sorry, I think it's up there. Forget. That sort of multicolored spot in the middle of the Russian territory, that is the city of Berlin. And you can sort of see that it's split up in the same way. There's a French section, the blue, there's the English section, the green, there's the US section, which is the yellowish orange, and then the Russian section, so West Berlin and East Berlin. Because, Berlin's the capital city, kind of a big deal. And with this suspicion, with these sort of new thoughts of, what's Russia going to do with these territories that it won't give up, that it, basically had rigged elections go on to try and, keep them. What else are they going to do here? And the phrase "the Iron Curtain" is not an actual literal wall or a curtain, but it is sort of that red line throughout Europe that shows this is how far the Soviet Union's, Russia, USSR, this is how far the Soviet Union's reach is. So everything to the east of the red line is under the control of the Soviet Union. Everything to the west of that line is sort of, we call it sort of free Europe, Western Europe, England, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, is outside of Soviet control. West Germany is outside of Soviet control. And the name Iron Curtain comes from the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. In one of his speeches, he said, "An iron curtain has descended across the continent of Europe." And like I said, it's not a physical separation. There's no wall, there's no fence, there's no curtain. But, that was the separation point between what Prime Minister Churchill called Western freedom-loving Europe and sort of that Eastern communist, under Russian control Europe. So when you hear the phrase "the Iron Curtain," we're talking about all of the parts of Europe under Soviet control during the Cold War. And because of this worry, because of this concern, right? Because we think, Russia's going to keep trying to take more and more territory. England thinks Russia's going to take more and more territory. And, Russia sure would like to take more and more territory. Don't get me wrong. But this becomes the sort of policy of the U.S. during the Cold War, and it also becomes the policy of our allies during the Cold War. And President Truman, so this is very shortly after World War II, if we still have President Truman, he believes that if communism can spread past its current borders further into Western Europe or into Asia, like this poster sort of shows, that it could go into Asia, then this would be just as bad as the policies of appeasement before World War II. Remember the Munich conference where the British Prime Minister gave away Czechoslovakia to Germany without any fighting, and without the permission of the Czechs either. And Truman understood that we could not get rid of communism without starting World War III. We could not get rid of communism without invading Russia, and he had zero interest in doing that. But if we could focus on stopping the spread of communism any further, so where the Iron Curtain is, that far and no further, no communism in Asia past Russia, and he figured that would be good enough, and that would be worth trying. So a lot of these policies we're going to be talking about tomorrow and the rest of the unit are going to come back to this. Not to go in and, stop communism. Stop communism's on the poster, sorry. But they're not going to try and go in there and destroy communism, but they are going to try and stop it from spreading any further. A lot of different ways we're going to do that. We're going to do that with money. We're going to do that with our military. We're going to do that with our culture. When we get to the 1980s, exporting our culture of music and blue jeans and McDonald's becomes a weapon in the war on communism. So we're going to be trying a lot of different methods to stop communism from spreading. Some are going to be more successful than others. And communism is going to try and, do what it can to, or at least the Soviet Union's version of communism. China's going to have its own version of communism. We'll see that when we get to it, to the revolution in China. And so I think that's probably it for today. Tomorrow, like I said, we'll take a look at some of these different types of containment policies, but it all comes back to containment policy. If the U.S. can keep communism where it is and not allow it to spread, then we win the Cold War, I guess, is the thinking. And that's going to be everything from the revolution in China, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, decisions that Ronald Reagan makes in the 80s. This is going to be decades and decades and decades of foreign policy for the U.S. And honestly, I don't know that we've really stopped even in 2021 entirely. So this is a big part of what America is on the world stage. From here in the 1945, 1946, all the way to here. So we'll pick up there tomorrow. Have a great day. If you have any questions, as always, send me an email. Take care.